Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, a forbidden game, and we're going to talk about Hogwarts Legacy, a forbidden game. All right, so I'll just summarize real quick. In 2020, between January 3rd and January 28th, a group came along and they said D&D be gone. They said, so basically the flow was Hasbro said we would like to change the OGL, and literally thousands of people in the from the OGL 1.0 champion group, from the OSR group, and from the Orc group said, because Dungeons and Dragons tried to change a legal document that they own, you now are not allowed to buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is now a forbidden game. All right, that was January 2023. Then came February 2023. And Hogwarts Legacy came out for PlayStation 5. I believe it's an exclusive. I think it's only for the PlayStation 5, which is kind of a big deal. Yeah, and let me stay focused here. So then a group said, we have a moral standard against J.K. Rowling, and that means that you are not allowed to buy, own, read about, run the game, watch reviews of the game. And this group went even, the forbidders on Hogwarts Legacy went even farther than the D&D Begoners and said you're not even allowed to write reviews about this game, right? Which pretty astounding, right? So what I think is really interesting is Dungeons and Dragons is suffering a terrible Dungeons and Dragons is suffering right now. Like, they are 40 years apart, 1983, 2023. Two separate groups came and did exactly the same thing. We have a moral standard against the owners of Dungeons and Dragons, and that means that you cannot read, run, you cannot buy, own, read, run, watch Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's terrible. It's a second extinction level event. The comet came in and Hasbro had to sidestep it, right? And Hasbro has been able to survive this second attempt, which I feel is still ongoing, to destroy it forever, right? What's interesting is, and I've done a ton of coverage on that. What's interesting is that Dungeons and Dragons isn't alone, right? It's only 1 month difference, but it looks exactly the same. There's very little difference between the two. It's the same forbidding, the same group. Actually, it's not the same group. Okay, so it's the same forbidding, right? It's like with one plus, right? On the Hogwarts Legacy side, they actually added that no one's allowed to write about the game, right? They can't review it. They can't, that's different. We didn't really hear that on the D&D side, right? And so it's the same energy, right? It's the same, hey, I'm offended, you don't get to do this thing. Yes, freedom is guaranteed in the Constitution, but I'm telling you that you can't, right? And it's pretty shocking just to see that D&D is really not alone. Now, what are the differences? What's really interesting is J.K. Rowling, the reason that all this is happening on Hogwarts Legacy is that J.K. Rowling went against the modern woke culture, right? And she offended the modern woke culture. That is not even remotely the case on Hasbro's side. Hasbro is incredibly progressive. Actually, I will say without exception, there's no question. Hasbro is the most progressive company in tabletop role-playing games without exception. There's nobody that even comes close. In fact, one of the things that's really interesting, you could see this playing out right now. Hasbro came out and said, going forward, it's species. We're going to drop race. Project Black Flag, right? It's supposed to fix every problem, right? You know what they said? We're keeping race, right? Like, just want to make sure that everybody out there, we want you to know, if you're super prejudiced, there's a place for you right here under Project Black Flag. Wow. And also, they're like, and in case anybody was wondering, that's why we named it Orc, right? The most problematic species in all of, and Orc is like, yeah, we just want to make sure everybody knows, we know there's a lot of, super prejudiced people under the OSR. we're welcoming you. Like that's all the orc is about. That's all keeping race for Project Black Flag is about. It's absolutely astounding, right? I can't believe, it's truly incredible, right? But so Hogwarts Legacy got in trouble because J.K. Rowling absolutely massively offended the modern woke American culture, right? And Dungeons and Dragons got in trouble because they tried to change a legal document they own. Wow, that's now what's kind of impressive is, like, I think the passion of the D&D Begunners is equal to the passion of the Hogwarts Legacy Forbidders, which is kind of like, usually when you offend the modern woke culture, you got a major problem coming in, right? But here, like, it seemed like the zealotry applied against Hasbro is very similar to the passionate forbidding that is happening on Hogwarts Legacy. One other thing that's really fascinating about the Hogwarts Legacy issue is specifically, so one other thing I think is really, really interesting about Hogwarts Legacy is it is very fascinating how powerfully the draw of entering a new world is, right? So Hogwarts Legacy, it does seem, so the D&D Begunners failed, and it really seems like the Hogwarts Legacy Forbidders are failing as well, right? And the reason why is, D&D is like, we got 1,000 worlds for you to visit. Do you want to visit them? And people are like, heck to the yes, right? And the Hogwarts Legacy is saying, hey, we know you like Harry Potter. What if we made a completely unbound world where you could pretty much do whatever you wished within Hogwarts itself? And people are like, oh, heck to the yes, which is so, it's also interesting that both of these efforts to forbid these, forbid D&D, forbid Hogwarts Legacy, it seems that both of them have very much massively failed. Okay. It's also, I think, very interesting too, the PS5 issue. I actually think, so one, the PlayStation 5 is really like, I used to debate with people whether a PlayStation 5 was better than Xbox. That debate is over, in case you didn't know. You could buy the new Xbox a week after it was released, right? It was on every shelf. I think we're a year and a half out from the release of the PlayStation 5, and you still cannot walk into a store and just buy it off the shelf, which is astounding, right? Like, I do not own a PlayStation 5 because I've literally never seen one on the shelf, which is like incredible. I also knew one dude who bought one the week after its release in a dark alley for $1,200 cash, and I told him he was a fool to do that. I was the fool. He was 100% right. It's a year and a half later, and he has his unit a year and a half before I have mine. I still can't walk into a store and buy a PS5 off the shelf. That's bonkers. Like, we've never seen anything like that. And so, believe it or not, the people who are smart enough or savvy enough or rich enough to get a PlayStation 5 are going to have this incredible experience in the Harry Potter universe that others can't have, right? Which is interesting, because that's the great thing about Dungeons and Dragons, is all you need is the book. There's no platform blocking you, right? So it is interesting that, people with the PlayStation 5 are going to be able to be fortunate to actually play this game, whereas people who don't own a PS5, they don't even have the question of whether the question is irrelevant to them, whether it's right or wrong to buy the game, because they can't buy the game because there's nothing to play it on. So that's kind of interesting. I really think it's fascinating that in January 2023, a group came and said D&D forbidden game, and then in February a group came and said Hogwarts Legacy forbidden game. Right? Very different reasons for bidding them, but all the actions, all the energy is exactly the same, in my humble opinion. Every word of that is my humble opinion, but what's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments, send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.